Jurassic World Rebirth is finally out, my friends, and I have just gotten back from the theater. I have just watched the film, and now I want to talk about the film. Here is my spoiler-free review. So, overall, I do think that this is a pretty fun movie. Like, it's probably best described as like a popcorn film, one where you can kind of just sit down, just relax, and just have a fun time while watching it. There's a lot of really cool sequences that keep you glued to the screen and are just really fun to follow along. The pacing is also very well done in this film too, or at least a lot better. It was a lot better than, like, say, Dominion. I think Dominion did have a huge pacing issue in the fact that they wouldn't really spend too much time with each creature before just immediately jumping to the next creature. We didn't get to spend too much time with the Quetzalcoatlus, for example, in Dominion. It was just kind of, it shows up real quick, destroys the plane, and then it's gone. We don't get to see it anymore. And then you're immediately thrusted into the next sequence, that being, something like the Therizinosaurus, or then just quickly moving on to the Pyroraptor. That was a huge problem that I had with the first, or with Dominion, sorry, definitely not the first film. That is a problem I had with that film. That problem seems to be absent here, as it felt like we did get enough time with each of the significant creatures, like the creatures that you probably want to spend the most time with. Of course, there were some background creatures here and there that just show up for a quick second, but those kind of animals have always been in the franchise, and they're just something there to help liven the world, liven the island, make it feel like it's a little bit more alive, so to speak. So the pacing was a huge improvement overall, and I was pretty happy about that because, again, that was one of my biggest gripes for the previous film. But what about the overall story? Is the story good at all? I mean, it's certainly an easy story to follow. Again, the pacing is pretty good. I'm just not a big fan of, and this is not a spoiler because we've known about this for a while. They've revealed this to us since since the beginning synopsis. But I'm not a big fan of the whole just completely ditching the animals being alive all around the world thing. They explain it right off the bat in the movie that the animals are either dying or already dead all around the world, and most of them have been moved or have moved themselves to the more, around the equator where the tropical zones exist. So they're mostly like isolated to islands or those specific areas. So their range is severely limited, and as a result, we don't get, like triceratops in the Rocky Mountains or anything like that, which I think is pretty unfortunate. I don't really like the fact that they took that step because I, for one, was a huge fan of the idea that we got a lot more story potential with them being all around the world. There was a lot of really cool things you could do. You could have like a whole movie set in the Rocky Mountains or any really cool location where you're just focused on a new cast of characters that have to solve their own unique problem. Like, it could have been smaller scale. It could have been, something that just was fun, different, like, kind of like Battle at Big Rock, but on a little bit of a larger scale, in a long form scale, in a feature scale, I guess. So I'm still not a huge fan of that. That was, of course, a huge plot point, but it's not a big deal at the end of the day because you still do get a fun movie at the end of the day. The opening scene was really cool. Yeah, it kind of set the standard pretty well. I'm not going to talk about that too much because the biggest focus of that opening scene, in order to talk about that, I'll have to get into spoilers. So I'm not going to talk about it until my spoiler review. So I guess keep an eye out for that. But the characters, I also thought they were pretty good. I liked them. I didn't really have any characters that I outwardly disliked, except for one, but I'm not really going to talk about him unless I want to get into spoiler talk. But honestly, I don't even know if I really disliked him because he kind of grew as a character. There was some good writing here. Like, I really liked Duncan. I really liked Henry Loomis. I liked Zoe Bennett. I thought that they were fantastic characters. They were a great trio. I did like the family characters. They were really, like, I really liked their segments in particular. I thought that they were very well paced and were like they in a lot of ways they felt like classic Jurassic Park or Jurassic franchise in the way that they were structured and in the way that they were, trying to survive their specific troubles. So that was very fun. Um, of course, there's a lot of action-packed moments that we have seen in the trailers, like the T-Rex River scene or like the Quetzalcoatlus scene. Those were pretty well done as well. They were very engaging and they were easy to follow. The Mosasaurin scene in particular was pretty fun too, but I'm not going to get into details because, of course, this is a spoiler-free review. Also, the cinematography in this was really pretty. Like, there was a lot of very cool shots in this. The way that the island in particular was shot, kind of does feel like Skull Island in a lot of ways, but also feels very distinct to that. There was a lot of cool dinosaur shots in that way. The CGI, of course, does look pretty good with maybe some shots here and there that don't look overall too convincing, but for the most part, yeah, I liked the way that the CGI looked. Of course, the dinosaur designs and other prehistoric creatures are all over the place. There are some that I've said many times since the trailers have been released that I absolutely love. That, like, mainly being the T-Rex. The T-Rex does look gorgeous in this film, and it's easily a highlight for me. Like, I love the way that this fella looks. The Spinosauruses, they, of course, their designs are pretty interesting. I love the Mosasaurus design. Don't really like the Quetzalcoatlus design, and I have a lot to say about the Quetzalcoatlus and its specific portrayal in the spoiler-filled review. So, yeah. I definitely don't think that this is my all-time favorite Jurassic film. Like, it's still kind of low on my lists, and I might do a ranking, after the dust has settled a little bit and I can really organize my thoughts a little bit more. But I can say with certainty that I don't even know if I don't know. It's hard to say where I'd place it. It's not a bad movie. I don't think it's a bad movie. I think it's pretty easy to follow. I think it's pretty cohesive, and I think that there's a lot of really cool moments that you could talk about. But I don't think that it reaches the same heights as other Jurassic franchise films. Like, of course, the first two Jurassic Park films, which are fantastic films in their own regard, but also fantastic in the context of the rest of the Jurassic franchise. Even the first Jurassic World film, I thought was really good and, like, really fun in its own way. This one, it was pretty good. It was pretty good in that way. One thing I will say that I really liked is the portrayal of these animals actually felt like animals. I don't want to get into details. Again, I'll probably talk about that a little bit more later, but they did feel more like animals rather than, like, say, for example, Blue, which was starting to lean more so towards the side of being, like, anthropomorphized, and that is something that was a little bit annoying with those animal portrayals in the previous Jurassic World trilogy. It really felt like they stepped away from that in this one, as every single creature that was here felt alive and felt like it was just existing and going about its day. And that's something that I really do appreciate. And I hope that we get to see more of that as this franchise continues, which I expect it to because these movies always do well. And I'd imagine that this movie would do well too, especially with all of the marketing that they've had. So yeah, I think it's certainly worth the watch. It doesn't reach the same heights as previous Jurassic Park films, if that's what you're expecting. Especially, considering the fact that David Kep did write this one and he wrote the first two Jurassic Park films. You might expect something to that same quality. I don't think it quite reaches that, but it was still a pretty fun watch overall. And it's just an entertaining film, kind of like in the same vein as Dominion. I might find this one a little bit more entertaining in the fact that, and that's mainly because I think that the pacing is better. But yeah, I think that it's around that same vein. So yeah, of course, I will work on the spoiler-filled review where I'll probably have a lot more meat and potatoes to add to it. But for now, that's pretty much my take. It's a fun movie. Certainly not the best movie in the franchise.